hours a day and night. She started cutting herself. She was hurting herself in all kinds of ways, and she even would tear off her clothes. She was peeing on the floor, and then this went on for years. So at 20, the church finally said, okay, we're going to give her an exorcism. And they performed what they considered their exorcism, which was like 1 to 2 rituals per week. So I don't understand
rituals.
That. Yeah. She ended up breaking both her knees because she was so weak and her weight loss got really, really bad. So she'd even try to walk, and she couldn't because she was so frail. Now, when they supposedly cast out these demons, she spoke out saying that the demon of Lucifer, Judas Iscariot, Nero, Cain, Hitler, and Fleischmann were in her. And Fleischmann was this 16th century priest that was disgraced for all kinds of things. Alcohol.
More lies and deceit.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like, who were they? Maybe they were the same spirits that went into these people. I don't know. But, what?
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, who knows? It could have been a couple little low totem pole demons or something. And we're going to get into that next week, too, the different levels of demons and stuff.
Lucifer is only personally inhabited one person, which was Judas, and he will inhabit one more.
The Antichrist, right?
Right.
And
but
that's
other than that, he doesn't mess around with that. He's got minions for that.
Yeah, they all do his dirty work. Well, okay, so then there's this one time where Annalise's boyfriend, she must have been having a good day or something, decides he wants to take her just for a drive, enjoy this nice day, and they go somewhere or whatever, and then she gets out of the car, and she says that the Virgin Mary comes to her, and she has this vision that she's walking with the Virgin Mary, and the Virgin Mary gives her the day that this all ends, which is June 30th, 1976. And that actually is the day that Annalise died. But here's the thing. The Virgin Mary supposedly told her that either you have a choice. You can either be freed by this group of demons, or you can save souls and die. So you got to suffer for it. So unbiblical.
So unbiblical.
Yeah.
Nobody can die for your sins.
Nobody. And Virgin Mary wouldn't come to you because that's unbiblical. That'll never happen.
Right. And just so you know, she wasn't a virgin after.
Right.
After she got married.
Yeah, she had kids and stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Good point. Thank you. So that was definitely another demonic thing going on, lying to her. And so she said she'd save the souls and die. So she needed to take on the pain and the sins of the world, and they'd be free. Well, none of us are free, so I guess that didn't work out. But the family and priests ended up being held accountable for her murder because on June 30th, she ended up dying in her sleep. And the family was exonerated, but the priests ended up having 6 months in jail and then probation. They never actually served jail time because by the time everything went through, it was done. They were priests, and court probably didn't want to go to hell.
Well, that's people. They got to blame somebody.
Right. And so they said that she died of
the priest that tried to help.
starvation, I think they said that she died of. But, I mean, if you look at, and we will have the pictures and stuff on our Facebook page, but, you can find this story all over YouTube, but
It's a nasty little story.
And
really
the audio of her exorcisms on there, and I would recommend never listening to that because that in itself can bring in demonic stuff to you.
It's a nasty audio.
I listened to it once years ago for 2 seconds.
You have to know something, yeah.
It freaked me out. It scared me,
It's bad.
and I don't know what it could have brought in. So you got to be real careful. Yeah. Okay, what's the other huge famous one?
The Exorcist.
Yeah, creepy.
Yes.
That was your movie, right? You said that was the scariest movie.
Freaks me out, man. I won't.
How old were you when you saw that?
I was like 3.
No, you were not 3. It came out in 1974, so you were at least...
I was older than that.
Yeah, I don't even know. I'm bad at math. But, yeah. When did you see that, though? You had to have been a kid, right?
No, I was older.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you didn't see it.
I was probably in my teens.
Oh. I know
that affected me literally... I mean, I know some people could watch it and say, oh, come on, whatever. But everybody has a different level.
Now they can. But back then when it came out, there weren't a lot of
for me, it was
that
affected me for a long, long time. In fact, when I see the commercial coming on TV or something like that, I won't even look at it.
Yeah, me neither.
Because that image goes in my head and it stays in there for a while and I can't get it out.
The only thing I can watch is the bunnies do The Exorcist in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's pretty good.
It is funny.
The bunnies.
That's the only thing I can watch.
Yeah.
But it's scary. But the true story was, in the movie, it was a girl named Reagan.
They're probably thinking that listeners are probably like, well, what kind of paranormal people and demonologist people are you? You can't even watch TV like that. I'm like, well, there's one thing when you're dealing with it in real life, but in real life you don't even have stuff like that going on.
Right.
It's...
I mean, you can.
You can, but we've not met anything to that level.
But not only that, but when you watch those shows, you are being entertained by darkness. It's not entertaining to me. When we go to help people, we're going to get rid of it to help somebody. So I think it's two totally different things. Yeah, I can't watch scary movies, especially stuff like that. But in this movie, it was a girl named Reagan, but a lot of people know it was a 14-year-old boy. The church deemed him Roland Doe, and a lot of people think his name was Robbie Mannheim, but in the transcripts and in stuff, it was R. So no one really knows his real name. Well, actually, some people do, and they have followed the case, and they studied it and researched it, and actually, supposedly, he works for NASA now, or he's still retired. He's like 76, 78, 80, something like that now. But, so anyways, so it starts out where... it's in Maryland in 1949, and he's like 13, 14 years old. His family notices that he has these welts on him. They began appearing on his body, and his bed would shake. Well, come to find out, Robbie and his grandma, one summer, or was it his aunt? His aunt. She was like a spiritualist, and she got him into the Ouija board, and they were using it all summer long. Well, she just suddenly died. And so, I don't really know the details. Did Robbie continue the Ouija board? Did he try to contact her? Did he just stop? And something happened at that point, and that's when all this began. So his bed would shake. Furniture randomly would move around the room. Let's see. Okay, so they take him to a doctor because, when your bed shakes, obviously you're sick, right?
Must have the chills.
That's what it is.
You hear the bed bouncing up and down? Boy, he's cold.
Well, the doctor gave him a clean bill of health, but those things didn't end. So his cousin knew some people at a church or a university, and they tell him about these issues that he's having, and they decide they're going to try and help him. Well, the family notices, all these occurrences are continuing, but increasing. Sounds like unexplained thumping, tapping, banging, stuff coming from an empty upstairs. You know how that goes. Objects moving on their own, such as the chandelier. Ooh, like in TV, movies and stuff. That's scary.
Dun, dun, dun.
Portraits of Jesus were banging on the wall. So there was frantic scratching and knocking from under the floorboards. Noises which could be described as a large group of people marching. So, they got used to this, considering it was like a haunting, type deal. Well, one day the mom walks in and she finds the entire bed with him in it, shaking and rattling violently. So now it's not just a bed, but he's in the bed and she freaks. Yeah. So she says, the dressers are moving, the night tables, the coffee tables. The doctor comes to see what's going on, and he says that the boy was sitting in a chair, and without any warning whatsoever, this boy was thrown completely out of the chair and landed multiple feet away. So even the doctor knew something was up, and they couldn't help the kid. So the night behavior became dramatically intense and disturbing. He got marks, bruises, scratches, welts. They started appearing more and more often. So they went to the Catholic Church as a last resort. The moment of meeting the boy, the priest noticed that he had a very dark stare, almost as if there was nothing behind the eyes. Again, common.
We've seen that.
We sure have.
It's very, very eerie.
Yeah.
It's almost being looked through.
Right.
Not looked at.
When they say the eyes are the window to the soul?
Yeah.
That's totally true. Yeah.
Totally.
It's scary. What about those kids with the black eyes, black-eyed kids? I wonder if that has something to do with this. But, so...
A black-eyed kid.
Black-eyed peas. So the priest also noticed that this kid was focused and staring at these books that he had. One was the Bible, but the others were their Catholic requiem stuff. And that's a telltale sign. not wanting any kind of religious object around you or whatever. Not that these religious objects have any power. It's the faith that causes the power.
Yeah.
Yep. So then this priest's chair lifts up and levitates, and it forced him backwards against a wall.
And that's the priest chair.
Right.
With the priest in it.
Yeah.
He it's no longer the kid.
Nope.
He's like, okay, well, I gotta go.
I guess you guys are right. See you.
You're right. Hey, is it really 6 o'clock?
So,
wow.
So, when you're sitting in a chair and it gets lifted up by a demon and you get thrown across the room, what's the first thing you do? You ask the demon his name. Hey, what's up? What's your name?
What's your name?
What's your name? But he asked it in Latin. Latin. And why do they use Latin?
Because that's one way to test the spirit to find out if it's real or the kid or whatever, because only demons are going to understand Latin.
Because what is it, a dead language or something?
It's a dead language, but you can still learn it.
Well, this little kid isn't going to know it for sure.
No, he's not going to know it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and then he gets an answer. He says, I am Legions.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that was...
The truth?
Well, he's saying, truth. Was
Legions,
it one?
in other words,
many?
I am many. You don't know.
Could have been many,
could
have been one.
Idea.
Because they never
by
told the truth.
saying I am Legions, the demonic spirit could have been one, could have been many. But for him to call himself many is just to instill more fear to the priest.
Right.
So whether it was or not, we don't know.
Whether you have one demon or 10, it's still as bad.
Yeah.
So they admit him to a hospital. What else are we going to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, what else would you do if you don't know?
But it was like a special hospital where there were monks and stuff. And same thing was happening there. Shaking and rocking of the bed. He was spitting on people. He was screaming. So he got real aggressive and did outbursts. He was foaming at the mouth. And so it ends up that they decide to do this exorcism. And for 3 consecutive nights, they start doing their prayers and stuff. The nurses had to restrain him. But he ended up getting one of his hands free. And he got one of the springs from the bed, from under the mattress, and he sliced the priest with the spring, and it went from his wrist to his elbow. That's a long gash. And so he ended up having to take time away from this case to heal. And so there was no one to help this kid. So now the parents, he's got to deal with it. Well, I think the details of this movie, the real story...
are actually worse than...
Yeah.
Yeah, which is usually the opposite. Usually Hollywood's it all up.
Yep.
But in 1974, they were like, nobody's going to believe this. So they actually dumbed it down a little bit.
Wow. They should... No, I don't want them to redo it.
It was too...
I'm surprised no one has redone it.
It's one of those movies,
You don't want to touch it because it's so creepy?
Yeah, it's so creepy.
Yeah. Well, then, St. Louis. When I saw the movie... They didn't explain a lot. There was a point where in the movie they show that St. Louis was on this kid's chest. They never explained what it meant in the movie, but, knowing the real story, the parents had family in St. Louis. So they took it as a sign. Why? I don't know. They took it as a sign. Let's take them to St. Louis by our family. Let's start something new there. So they
Let's go on a trip.
Yeah, a trip's going to get rid of the demons. They don't like to travel. So he has a whole new set of doctors, then the new church, and they kept a detailed diary, and they turned it into a book called Possessed, this true story of an exorcism. But all the detailed stuff is in here. That's where we're getting this information from, by the way. So he says to the priest, he's cussing and he's doing all this sexual stuff. Do you know that one of the priests was from Milwaukee? The real young one. I thought that was sort of neat. But he was real forceful. He spit on them. He threatened violence. He actually broke one priest's nose. Vulgar sexual propositions. The priest would recite the exorcism prayers every night straight for a full 3 weeks. So they had to pin the boy down, and the priest noticed that physically his strength was far beyond any other boy his age. So again, all these telltale signs.
Yep.
They held a pillow over his face to stop him from swearing. Which probably wasn't a good idea, but...
Yeah. Quit breathing, too.
Yeah, it's
that didn't work out, did it?
I'm sure they got to the point of frustration or, exhaustion. You don't start...
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's not like any of these priests would have had an extensive amount of experience with something like this. These are rare cases. I'm sure there's more of them.
Yeah.
This is a big world, and we're not going to hear of things happening in little islands and places we don't know about.
Right. A lot of
they
that
just
stuff.
think it's a sickness, and these people probably just end up dying, from malnutrition or physical